to meet with us today, because with everything going on, the new legislation, it is very, very important that if you are sitting in this seat, that you are certified with the state. All right. So the media specialist test is a mixture between teaching strategies, collaboration, and a lot of terminology and questions regarding the media center. So we have sort of 3 goals for us today. And one of the goals is sort of understanding the language in which, and the acronyms for all the different things, library media, and all the different words and phrases that go along with the lingo sort of with media specialists. Our second goal is to sort of walk you through the test format, looking at the questions and going over sign up and how you get familiar with the test. And then our third goal, which is very important, not only on the test, but sort of on the job, is how to sort of interpret and look at academic reviews. It's a little bit different than customer reviews. All right. So as we're going through the presentation, feel free to put questions in the chat box or write them down, and we will get to them as soon as we can. There will probably be around 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to sort of ask any questions or anything that needs clarification for you at the end. So totally up to you how you want to roll with it. Okay.
All right. So there are a bunch of key terms you're going to need to know for the exam. Just a note, I'm going to go through the terms, explain what they are, but you're not going to have explicit questions on these terms. You're going to find these terms within the questions. So familiarizing yourself with these, the acronyms and the terms, is really going to be of use to you. Because if you've got a question with OPAC and you don't know what OPAC is, you're going to be like, how do I answer this question? So really familiarizing yourself with these terms is going to help. So the first one we're going to go over is ALA. That is the American Library Association. That is our national professional organization. It has lots of useful resources and lots of things that will help you in your profession. That's where our freedom to read comes from, and our Library Bill of Rights. So familiarize yourself with the ALA. Consider joining if you wish. FAME is our Florida Association of Media and Education, and that is our state level professional organization. So just be aware of that. Again, I recommend joining it, going to the conference. You will get a lot out of it, but you're just going to need to know what FAME is for the exam. The Dewey Decimal System, this should be something familiar to all of you. It is how your libraries are organized. It's a system for organizing the contents of your library, and it's based on the division of all knowledge into 10 groups, and each group is assigned 100 numbers. So your zeros, your 100s, your 200s, your 300s, and so on. Each group is then further broken down into tens, and then into the ones, and then into the decimals. So when people say, are you going to genreify your library, that refers to your fiction section, right? The nonfiction section is already genreified, right? Everything is broken down by topic. You're going to find all of your elephant books together based on their Dewey Decimal classifications. An academic book review. This is a form of literary criticism. The book is described or analyzed based on the content, style, and merit. These are published in professional journals. This is not something you'll find on Amazon, not something you'll find on Goodreads, not something you'll find on Common Sense Media. People like to turn to those. You can get a view of what the public thinks of it, but these academic book reviews are librarians and book critics that are reviewing specifically for the content and the merit of it. And they're going to take an impartial look at these books. OPAC is the acronym for Online Public Access Catalog. Every library has an OPAC, but not every library has the same OPAC. So on your exam, when they will refer to OPAC. They won't talk about Destiny, and they won't talk about Alexandria, and they won't talk about Circe. they're going to talk about OPAC. It's what replaced your print card catalog. And it is, again, online public access catalog. We're going to go through a few more terms, but on the book is a link that will take you to a list of terms that we found that will really help you. It is from England, so some of the spellings are a little funky, but the terms are all the same. Excuse me. You're going to need to know about the Boolean searching, and you're going to need to know what bound refers to, what the call number is, those kinds of things. They're going to be used inside of those questions, again, not a strict definition. Nobody's going to say, what is the definition of a MARC record, right? But they will refer to the MARC records in the question. All right. So your next set of terms is ISBN. This is the International Standard Book Number. Every book, every binding of every book has its own ISBN number. They used to be 10 digits. Now they are 13 digits. That's the barcode on the back of the book. Okay. And it's used to indicate the title of the book, the author of the book, as well as the binding of the book. So your hardcovers, your soft covers, your ebooks all have a separate ISBN. And if a book is re-released, right, some of the classics get re-released, they have new ISBNs because it is a different printing. So you should be aware of the ISBN, that each book has one, and that it is specific to that particular printing and binding type. Your MARC record, the MARC record is machine readable cataloging, right? It's the format. It came from the Library of Congress. It started about 40 years ago, and it's the mechanism that computers use to give you the record. When you search in Destiny, it's the MARC record, right, in the back that is giving you the information to see the record. You could always go and look at the MARC view within Destiny if you're curious to see what it looks like. You will never have to use it. We use that here, but you need to understand what it is and what it's used for. The printed book are obviously the physical forms of the books, literary works of fiction and nonfiction, and they contain, of course, stories, poetry, and the like. But when we talk about a printed book, those are the physical books that you have in your libraries. Ebooks or digital books are the same thing in full electronic files, right? It looks exactly like the regular book, but it's going to come to you in electronic format. Your graphic novels are novels that are in comic strip format. Be aware that these are very different than comic books. They are not comic books. They are stories told in comic strip format. I just read The Great Gatsby in in graphic novel format, right? Same story interpreted as a graphic novel. So really know that when your students come to look for these books, it's because they tell stories. And they tell them in a visual way that really appeals to our students. So just be aware of that. Copy cataloging is the process of taking a pre-existing bibliographic record, and instead of us creating a new record from scratch, which if you've ever done it, is a pain in the behind, and it is an art, not a science, and it's terrible. So we copy catalog 90% of what we do. The primary source of copy cataloging in the US and around the world is the OCLC. You can look that up. It's very useful, but that is what copy cataloging is. You take somebody else's record and copy it into your catalog. Okay? All right. Florida has a research and a reading model that are unique to them. The fine standards for Florida's research model can be found on the DOE website. We've linked that for you where it says Florida's research model. It stands for focus on the information needed, investigate the resources, note and evaluate facts, develop information into knowledge for presentation, and self-evaluate. We recently redid this. The test was done in 2018, the last time the test was revised. The fine standards were revised in 2021. So your fines levels may look different on the exam. I don't remember, the S stood for something else. I don't remember what it stood for, but just be aware that it won't be self-evaluate if you see it on your exam. It should be pretty self-explanatory. It is not that remarkably different, but this is now aligned to the best standards where it was aligned to the Florida standards before. Okay? So that's your fine standards. Very useful when you're teaching research to your students. It's a very easy model to follow. And there is, for secondary, on the EdTech website, a whole unit that you can use with your students. Ready to go for you. Elementary is up next. It will be done this fall. READS, or Florida's Integrated Library Media Reading Guidelines. As media specialists, you are going to be thinking about reading in a whole new way. As classroom teachers, you think about the mechanics of reading and the reading levels. As media specialists, you're talking about reading for joy and for pleasure. So it's different. You're not going to be exploring reading levels per se. You're going to be exploring what makes your students happy, right? What do your students want to read about? Joey wants to read about sports. That's great. Susie wants to read graphic novels. That's great, right? So you're looking at reading in this new way. Reading as a personal activity. You're going to explore the characteristics and the history and the awards of creative works, right? That doesn't mean you don't teach your kids about when they see the medals on the books, what those mean, because they do signify major works of art. You're going to analyze the structure and aesthetic features of the creative works. You're going to develop a literary-based product. That may mean that the kids make book trailers, right? It's not a book report. You're not looking for the same kind of knowledge. And you're going to score their reading progress, again, differently. Are they coming back? Are they checking out a lot? Those are the things that you're looking for. And again, you can look at these on the Florida DOE. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions about the terms, fines, reads? All right. Steph, are you doing the awards?
Yeah, I was talking on mute. Sorry. Okay. So within sort of the culture of literature and children's authors and authors and illustrators, there are many different awards. And knowing authors and illustrators is a very good thing for you to know. They will ask a lot about it. And then they will also ask a lot about the awards. They are not weighted heavily. However, the questions do get very specific, as who won the Caldecott Award in 1992. Okay. Now, each award is linked and it'll give you a timeline. Realistically, you are not going to remember every single winner from every single year. Like Lisa said, the test stops in 2018. So you are not going to be having questions about popular authors today. You want to think about the classic ones, the ones that were most popular when you were growing up, the ones that are still timeless today, right? So a lot of E.B. White, Shel Silverstein, Eric Carle, which we'll go into in a minute. I don't remember the author, but I remember one of my questions is about Tar Beach. So it's a lot of
Faith Ringgold.
Yeah. So there is a lot of classic books that they're going to ask about. Now, the Newbery Award, the Caldecott, the Coretta Scott King Award, and the Geisel Award are all national awards, right? And there's a difference to each one of them. So the definition is explaining to you what each one is, right? So for instance, if they ask a question about the Coretta Scott King Award and it's a Dr. Seuss book as an option, you know it's not going to be a Dr. Seuss book, right? Because that doesn't fit the qualifications of what the Coretta Scott King Award is. So again, get to know what the different awards are for. And this is also great to know when you are doing read alouds or you're showing kids literature and showing them why a certain book gets an award, right? But each one of these are linked. Also, you have the YALSA Award for teen literature, and then you have 2 specific ones for Florida. All right. So you have SSYRA, which is given out every spring, and it's through grades 3 and 8. And there's also an SSYRA Junior for the picture books that are given out every year, as well as the Florida Teen Reads. These are specific to Florida. They do not, if I remember correctly, they're not going to ask you specific ones about these awards. They will ask you about the national awards. And, they might ask you about the, for illustrators, and most of the choices will all be authors except for the one illustrator, right? They do things that you could use your testing strategies with and be able to eliminate people, but you need to first sort of research and learn a little bit more about books and the authors and the illustrators. It's going to be people that you probably have heard of. Okay. Now, books in Destiny in the library and in general are categorized. You have E, which is everyone easy in your picture books. You have F, which stands for your chapter books, your fiction chapter books. And then, like Lisa was talking about, was the Dewey Decimal System. And this is your breakdown of your nonfiction. Your nonfiction section also includes fairy tales, myths, and then 741, your graphic novels. All right. And then also, biographies are considered nonfiction. They do go with the Dewey Decimal. However, they are separated individually, usually 92 or 920, which is a compilation of biographies. Now, why is this important? All right. Again, the test is not going to give and ask for definitions. They're going to say, okay, a second grade class is coming in and doing research on birds. Where would you send them to? Which shelf would you send them to in the library? Right? So understanding the different areas of your shelving and the different areas of the library, that's where this is going to come into play. Right? Or you have a volunteer who's coming in to shelve books for you. She has a stack of biographies. Where should they put them? Right? So it's going to get specific like that. All right? And for those of you that are not really sure, every library, unless you genreify it or anything like that, is set up in this way. So once you learn or you teach a student how to look for books in a library, they can look and find a book in any library as long as it's set up still using this system. Even though nowadays we're kind of genreifying and doing different things with our shelving, typically most all libraries are set up like this. Any questions? We're going through a lot of facts, but I think once you start seeing the question items, you'll understand how it all relates and correlates.
All right, so we've been talking a little bit about the Dewey Decimal System. It is the classification system that we use here and that state libraries use, or media centers, I should say, use around the state. Your local public libraries likely use this system as well. It was published in the US by Melville Dewey in 1876 as a way of organizing our libraries. It's important to know these broad categories, but it's also important for you to drill down into the specifics, more likely the tens, right? Because if they ask you where you would, a kid wants a question or book about a car, where would that be? A kid wants a book on sports. Well, that's 796. A kid wants a poetry book. That's 811. Some of these will begin to be in your head that you will never, ever, ever get out because those are the ones that your kids want. Basically, it's broken down into zeros, which is your computer science, information, and general works, 100 philosophy and psychology, 200 religion, 300 social sciences, 400 is language, 500 is science. That includes your plants, your animals, your dinosaurs, your planets, right? And each number has a different set of books. Planets are at the beginning of the 500s. Animals are towards the end of the 500s. Your technology, that's going to be your robotics, your computers, and interestingly enough, pets. Pets are in the 600s. So that's what I'm saying. Familiarize yourself with those 10s. 700s is your arts and recreation. That's where you're going to find your graphic novels, right? They're 741.5 because they're categorized as art books. Whether or not they are fiction or nonfiction, all graphic novels go under 741.5. 800s are your literature, right? So your plays, your poetry, that's what you're going to find there. Fiction was originally part of the 800s. That's why it's literature. We just broke it out and made its own section. It was too large. So we created that fiction section out of the 800s. So that's where fiction fits into the Dewey Decimal System. And your 900s are history and geography. It's easy to find online, methods of the Dewey Decimal System broken down by the 10s as well. It's going to be helpful for you to know those broad categories, and the 10s, you don't really need to know the decimal places and the ones, but the broadest categories and the next ones down. So the 10, like if you're in the 500s, 510, 520, 530, 540, right? Each time you change the 10, the topic changes. So that's important for you to know. We're going to go on to the next slide where we're going to talk a little bit about the Library of Congress classification system. You do not need to know in depth what the Library of Congress classification system is and how it works. It is used by most academic and research libraries. Their collections are larger. They need to get more specific in their cataloging. I usually use my own college library as an example when talking about this. It was 23 stories. There is no way that there is enough specificity in the Dewey Decimal System to catalog a collection that exists in 23 floors. We need to break it down further. So Library of Congress is a system of letters and numbers, and it truly, truly is a lot more diverse and a lot more robust, but way too much for our small school libraries and even our smaller public libraries. So, but what they are going to ask you is the difference between the two, right? You will likely have questions on what is the difference between Library of Congress classification versus Dewey Decimal. One was Library of Congress was created by the Library of Congress. If you've ever been there, you know their collection is absolutely ginormous and amazing. So they had to develop their own level of classification to handle the size and the breadth of that collection. Remember, they've got everything from artifacts to records to photos, right? A lot more things. The Dewey Decimal was introduced in 1876 by Melville Dewey. Library of Congress is a mixture of letters and numbers. Dewey Decimal is only numeric. Library of Congress has 21 main classes. Dewey Decimal has 10 broad classes. The Library of Congress allows for more call numbers so that you can get more specific. Dewey Decimal allows for limited call numbers, making it much better for our smaller collections. All right, any questions about that?
Okay, so something weird that you need to know, and is that when you take the test, everybody gets a different test. However, there always seems to be an Eric Carle question. Eric Carle, growing up, when we were growing up, is a very, very popular author, but also illustrator. And his form of artwork is sort of, when you open up an Eric Carle book, it's an Eric Carle book based on the collage and his technique. They do ask you about his technique, or they do ask, which author used collage as a form of artwork for assembling their different pieces. There is going to be an Eric Carle question. It might ask a title of his different books, which one uses collage, again, use your testing strategies because most of the time there's only one Eric Carle book in the bunch. But so he has 70 around picture books that uses this collage technique, but you might get a question about this technique. The creators and the writers of the test always almost use this question.
Right. And just know that they're going to be using the more well-known ones. They're not going to be looking at the more obscure ones, right? You might get a brown bear question. You might get a
very hungry
caterpillar, or the very quiet cricket, or the very I forget the caterpillar one, right? So it's going to be his main ones, not anything obscure. So just familiarize yourself with the more popular of the Eric Carle picture books. All right, so they will ask you about academic journals. They're not going to ask you to define them, but they will perhaps ask you what academic journal is a publication of the American Library Association, and then you'll get 4 or 5 different journals. So familiarizing yourself with these academic journals is important for the test. And also in your practice as a media specialist, right? In your practice as a media specialist, you're going to be consulting the reviews from these academic journals as you make your selections. So School Library Journal is the premier publication for librarians and information specialists who work with children and teens. It gives you great features on literacy and best practices in technology and education policy. Again, also reviews. It is the premier journal for children's librarianship. It does cover both public and school librarianship. Children in Libraries is a journal of the American Library Association, more specifically the subsection, the Association for Library Service to Children. This is not a journal where you're going to find reviews. This is like scholarly research and practice in library service to children. So it gives you lots of pedagogy and ideas and current research about the profession, but it is not going to be giving you the reviews. But you may be asked who publishes this? And it's a division of the American Library Association. All right. Booklist is a book review magazine. That is all that you will find in Booklist. It's been published by the ALA since 1905. It's one of the most reliable review journals. We consult Booklist all the time. The thing about Booklist and School Library Journal in their reviews is if the book does not have any merit, they will not review it. Booklist and School Library Journal only give positive reviews. So if it's not there, reviewed by them, they didn't think enough of it to review it. Your library journal is the parent magazine to School Library Journal. It's a full-service library magazine. It's tailored to the needs of all librarians, public, academic, corporate, school, you name it, right? That's the premier library journal. Hornbook is a distinguished resource in the field of children's and young adult literature. It is also about reviews. Hornbook magazine reviews are excellent. Knowledge Quest. This is a journal that is part of the AASL, so the American Association for School Librarians. It's another acronym you should be aware of, is AASL. And Knowledge Quest is a publication of AASL, which is a division of the ALA. It talks about the integration of theory and practice in school librarianship, new develops in education, learning theory, relevant disciplines. It's a fabulous journal to read, particularly as a new librarian. You'll find lots of information and ideas in there. I highly recommend checking it out. Most of the issues are available online.
Okay, so when we talk about book reviews, again, these are academic reviews. Some are written from certified library media specialists. Some give real reviews. Some only do positive reviews. However, so this is just an example of Sunny from Jason Reynolds, where every review sort of gives a synopsis of what is going on and what the story is about, right? This is going to help you determine if it's a good book for you to have or add in your library, but also more importantly, right now, it's going to help sort of with your age appropriateness. We tend to say that you want 2 reviews that say the same thing for age ranges. And so then you use the majority of what people say. So for instance, this book, Sunny, by Jason Reynolds, is about a 13-year-old homeschool between, you know, what he wants and what he loves doing. Notice that the age range, it says 10 to 14 years old, right? So I know that I'm not putting this in for a 2nd grader to be reading, right? So it's very important when looking at this. This is what we use to determine age ranges and appropriateness for school levels, right? So if this were to be an elementary school, it could only be checked out to 5th graders, right? That 5th grade and above. And it would be okay for middle school and it would be okay for high school. So other reviewing sites and publications, again, that we use are Booklist, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus Reviews, and then again, that School Library Journal is sort of our go-to. All right. They do ask you questions on where you can find certain reviews or age, or this review says this, where should it go? All right. Okay. So here is the big part. This is the test breakdown of the questions. All right. They do it based off knowledge competencies. And then on the next, I'll show you where you can find it on the FTCE website of where you can get sort of the breakdown of the competencies as well. But this gives you which has the percentage, holds the highest percentage of your test questions, right? So this one, knowledge of teaching methods for implementing multiple literacies. That's 8% of the questions, all right? If you are teaching now, you should have no problem answering these questions. These are about collaborating with teachers, collaboration with students on projects. How do you help in the classroom? How do you use your knowledge base as a media specialist for cross curriculum, right? So those are what those projects are. Knowledge about information specialist responsibilities of school library media specialist. All right, this is on the state level. What they think and expect a media specialist should be doing with their time academically. It's not asking about bulletin boards. It's not going to ask you about lamination. It's not going to ask you about how to fix the copy machines or how to print ID badges. This is academically the responsibilities from the state on what they think that you should be doing, right? It is not what your principal or your administration says you should be doing.
Right. Something to note here is that, like Stephanie said, you're talking about best practices in school librarianship. So regardless of if you're an elementary librarian and you are on the wheel, that is not best practice. That is the reality of our situation, but that is not best practice in librarianship. Best practice in librarianship is working in collaboration with the classroom teachers. So keep that in mind when those questions come up, because your reality is different from the best practice.
All right, and then I just want you right here, knowledge of state and national legislation and their effects on school library media programs. The test was made and is stopped at 2018. It has none of our new legislation on this test. So everything that just passed and everything that we're going through today is not on the test, which is probably better. It's more sort of an open, a more open platform with free choice and free voice legislation from back in the day, right? It's not as restrictive. All right. So that's the breakdown of the test questions. Again, the harder part is going to be the specific library media questions. The teaching questions, I don't think you guys will have an issue with. So what have we done for you? We have given you different study guides and resources for you to use for your studying and going about the test. The test is 100 questions, and it is a timed test. You have to pay to take the test. It gets more expensive every time you have to take the test. Okay. So make sure that you're going through these resources, you are studying for the test, and you give yourself time. The test is at a testing center, a computer testing center. It's available anytime. You can go and you can register and you can sign up. So don't sign up or register for it until you are absolutely ready to go. So the first study guide that we're giving you is the Praxis study guide. The Praxis test is not what you are taking. This is to get nationally certified as a media specialist for every single state. Your test that you're going to take is specifically Florida. But why we're giving you the Praxis is because it's going to help you with the breakdown of the test questions again. So bear with me. I don't want to give you guys a headache as I'm scrolling through to get to the questions. But a lot of the questions are going to relate to sort of what you're going to see on the Florida test as well. So here's an example of what Lisa was talking about. Which of the following review sources is a publication of the American Library Association? Right? The Hornbook, Book List, School Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, or Bulletin of Center for Children Books. Does anybody know the answer to that? I want to take a guess on what that answer is. All right, Lisa?
It's Book List.
All right, so it'd be Book List.
I would scroll down. I was going to say, scroll down to number 7, because this is like a good question on reviews for them to take a look at. Right? When using a formally written review to select a work of fiction for the Library Media Center, the library media specialist should focus mainly on the reviewer's assessment of the, right? Does anyone have any idea what this would be? It's the value of the work for its intended audience, right? You're looking at the interest level of the subject matter to the population the library media serves. But the most important thing is the value of the work for its intended audiences. You will look at all of these things, right? So these are really, really good questions for you to focus on. They are very, very similar to the questions you will find on the Florida exam. There will just be some Florida specific questions, but library procedures and policies for the most part are standardized on a national basis, right? All of the library programs are the ones that you are worth going to are all ALA accredited. So they're all teaching the same standards. Right? If you don't go to an ALA accredited library school, you're not getting that same quality of education. And libraries will look down on those degrees and they may not hire you. They look specifically for ALA accredited, degrees. And the Praxis is based upon the curriculum of those ALA accredited library schools. So the quality of the questions and its ability to help you prepare for our exam is great.
The next one is specifically the Florida teaching certification for the test, or what you are going to be taking. Again, this is going to give you more information about your test. It is not a free for all. You can sit there all day and take it. You only have 2.5 hours to take the exam. All right. Like we were talking about, if it's in a testing center, it's very different. There is a camera staring at you. You have to put everything inside of a locker. So you have to be sure that you are timing yourself and going through it. I think the passing score is about 75%. It's not like you have to get 100% on the test to pass. You will get an unofficial score once you're done with the test. It'll tell you right there on the screen. They'll print it out for you, but you will have to wait to get sort of an official passing of the certification test. But this, again, this is where I got the breakdown of the test questions. You can print it for yourself. And then this is a shorter one, but this will give you more information about the different competencies and specifically what they're asking for you on the test. There is, did I skip it? Or maybe it's another one. On the other one, there is going to be, oh, there we go. This one. These are the test sample questions specifically for Florida. And it's very small, but these are good questions for you to look at as well. There are also, if you see that it's not enough for you, you can go on Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble and buy a bigger, thicker teaching certificate manual study guide, or you can email Zoraida Rodriguez in our department, and we have a few that we can lend out for you to look at and to use as a study guide also, if you feel that this isn't enough to get you by. Sometimes I was lucky enough to actually the exact questions in the study guide was actually one of the questions on my actual test. So they do correlate quite a bit of it. All right. So going through here is a question about the Dewey Decimal System and what's the advantage. Does anybody know the answer to this one? What's one advantage of the Dewey Decimal Classification System over the Library of Congress Classification System? Why do we use the Dewey Decimal System, essentially? Excellent, right? It's easier to use, right? It's easier to understand. So yesterday I asked this question, but I left that there so everyone saw the answer. So again, just going through again the study guides and the resource of what we're giving you is going to help you quite a bit.
All right. So Library Media Services has a professional library available to you in Mac and VIA. We have two books, Library 101 and Where Do I Start? They are single use, right? So think of them as a book on your shelf. If one person is occupying that book, only that one person can use it. However, you could open it up to read it. So please don't check these out right now. Certainly open them and read them and use them for your knowledge, but don't check them out so that they are available to anyone who needs them. To get to these, you're going to go to, when you're in Mac and VIA, you're going to click on the backpack, right? That's how you get to Mac and VIA. You're going to click on your backpack and you're going to change site and you're going to look for the Palm Beach Professional Library, okay? And then you'll see those two books. There's a lot of good information in them, both for the exam, on the theory of librarianship, best practices, those things that you may not be aware of yet. But also, as you begin your careers as new media specialists, they're going to have great information. The Where Do I Start was something that really helped me when I started, because we know how overwhelming it is to take over a media center. It seems like it's going to be a fun job, and it is a super fun job, but there is a lot more to it than meets the eye. And these two books can really help you along with that, along with our new media specialist cadre, where we'll go through the practices of librarianship and help you learn those things that will make you a successful librarian. But these are great resources to have in your back pocket at any time, and they're always available to you.
All right, so this does not have to be a one and done situation, right? As you're going through your test practice, as you're going through the resources, as you sort of are getting closer towards your testing window, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out. If you get to a question and you don't understand why it's an answer, please feel free to reach out. If you need anything else from us, we are here for you. We can try to help and get you what you need. So a couple things before I leave you today, and what seemed to be really helpful yesterday when we went through this is if you just Google FTCE. FTCE is your testing, is your where you go to sign up for the test. All right, all your tests, right? So you have register, all about your tests. I can't specifically show you what you have to do to register because it is by sign in only. You have to sign in order to set up. However, this breaks it down for you, everything you have to do for the test and to register for it. Okay, now here, these are all yours, and right here, educational media specialist, PK to 12. So when you click on that, you can see and you can find a test center near you, and you just type in there are tons of test centers near us in South Florida. You can just pick one that's closest to you. You would find their test information, where they are, when when you can sign up, and then you can sign up for it. All right. They give you different things. If you need to know their testing policy, you can't take anything with you inside the testing room. You have to put everything in a locker. You have to sign up. You need the score. Your test fee is $150 for the first one. It's going to go up every time you have to take the test again. Keep that in mind. Okay. So here's your certification requirements. Everything you need is on this website. Once you pass the test, you have to apply to add it to your certification in the Florida Department of Education. It does not happen automatically. So if you pass the test and you don't understand why you don't see it on your certification, that is because you need to apply for it. And unfortunately, again, you have to pay for it to be on your certification. You only have to take the test one time, but every time you renew your certificate, it will get renewed as well for your certification. Just make sure you have those points, your generic certification points. All right.
I was going to say, something to be aware of with the test is to brush up on your computerized test taking skills. When I took the exam, it was the very first time I'd ever taken a computer-based standardized test. I always like to skip the question, right? We've always taught our students, skip the questions you don't know, circle them and come back to them. You can do that with this, but be very careful. I accidentally submitted my test while going back to answer questions I had skipped. It turned out not to matter, but brushing up on those computerized test taking skills, particularly if you haven't taken one on the computer, is worthwhile. Ask one of your students what it's like to take one on the computer. They'll let you know. But for me, that was the struggle for me, not the knowledge, but was the computerized part of it. So be aware of that.
They do not have a virtual option yet. All right. So it's not like you can take it at home on the computer. You can, as long as they have openings in the test center, Josh, you can sign up 3, 4, 5 a week day in advance. But just make sure, as long as they have an opening in a spot, you can go in. It just depends on the center itself and how busy they are. So you can look into that. All right. So we have a few minutes to sort of open up the floor for specific questions. So what questions do you guys have for us specifically?
Do you have any like an acronym or something like that to memorize those the Dewey Decimal System? Is there like a some kind of trick to memorizing it?
I don't have you're talking about a mnemonic device.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I don't have one. When you look at it, it's just going to make sense to you. Let me see if I can find a breakdown.
Yeah, sometimes.
Right, for pets.
For the most, it makes sense.
Right. Let's see if I can find an image of it so that I can break it down for you with the tens. All right, this will work. All right, let me share into it. All right, so this is, it doesn't have the actual tens, but it does give you an idea of what goes in there, right? So this is what Stephanie was talking about, the 600s, it's applied science. You've got anatomy, medicine, airplane, space travel, cookbooks, domesticated animals. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense, right? Your social sciences also include fairy tales and folk tales. So 398.2 would be something to be aware of, right? This kind of breaks down what's in each area.
See, that's weird to me because if the fairy tales and folklore is in the 300s, wouldn't you would think that it would be in the 800s, right? Because it's part of literature, like fiction.
Right. But because it's folklore, it goes under your social science.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Right. So that's why I'm saying be aware of what's in each category because they're going to ask questions about that.
Okay.
Things like that, right? You've got
it's weird. Like the human body goes with like large movable automobiles and planes and trains and technology.
right.
Like sometimes it just doesn't, there's no rhyme or reason.
And look at your zeros. You've got encyclopedias, general references, computers, codes, and oddities. So if you're looking for haunted houses and ghosts and goblins, those are in the zeros. You would think that, right? This is why we're talking about it. The language books, that's pretty specific. But notice that picture books and foreign language books, right? Like if you have a Spanish book, like if you have Diary of a Wimpy Kid in Spanish, technically it will get cataloged in the 400s. I think it's 440. I don't remember exactly, right? So those are things to be aware of.
Any other questions?
And you can find the tens listed anywhere, but you know, it's an interesting thing. Right? Arts and recreation, you're going to get your joke and riddle books there.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take a look at this later. This.
Yeah, it's really helpful to know, and to familiarize yourself with it, not just for the test, but for your kids are going to ask you where certain books are, and just to know off the top of your head the certain categories that they're going to look for. And it's also really useful when you're creating signage for your library. And you may get asked questions about signage because signage is a practice that's part of librarianship, is directing your user to find what it is that they're looking for. How can you make it easiest for your user?
Right.
Everything that we talk about is for the end user, your customer, right? And the customer is obviously your student or your teachers in this case. Tabitha, yes. Stephanie is going to send this to you guys to be able to download. And I recorded today's session, but I also recorded yesterday's session. So if you go into the YouTube channel for Library Media Services, you can find yesterday's presentation there, and you can use that to your leisure.
Tabitha, I'm going to send both to you guys in an email. However, remember that when you download it or for a PDF, you're not going to get those active links to the different sites. So I'll send you the view only. Just keep the link in an email that you could always refer to it. And then also I'll send it in a PDF form just in case. But remember, when you do the PDF, it's not going to get those active links. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.